to watch our show. It gets on the algorithms, the all-powerful algorithms. And talking about all-powerful, my first guest today, as I said, my introduction, I'm head of the Excellence Wealth trading team, and I mentor a professional trading team at a licensed fund. We'll have a lot of the team in today to talk to you. We've mentioned a number of them already, but the first one to talk fundamentals is Alexis. Alexis, how are you going?
Hi, Paul. Hi, everybody.
How are you doing? Thanks.
Yes, all good.
Good. So we'll have a chat with Ainslie and Shukri about the week reasonably soon. Got a little bit of talk about Bitcoin being weak. Shukri, be really keen to get your opinion on that as we go along. Ainsley, that gold range has been a bit of an issue, and we'll talk about that a bit later on as well. But Alexis, what's happening for us fundamentally this week?
The fundamentals are pretty interesting last week, and I think I guess this is the time where it kind of helps to have a fundamental bias. So my name is Alexis, and I trade with a fundamental analysis bias in my trading, but of course I use the technicals for entries and finding trades to take in. All right, so I will wait a while I get a screen share. And in the meantime, I'll talk to you guys about a couple of stuff that happened last week that caused the pound to tank, or what's happening in the euro. So a couple of stuff. I would like to show you guys a couple of stats. Let me see if I can share screen. And yes, okay. So a couple of just a simple stat. I think the so-called story of last week was inflation. Okay. Hope you guys can see the slide. So this is from Trading Economics website that I use pretty often for the free stats. And this is just a comparison of the inflation figures, the consumer inflation figures that's been coming out in the last so-called couple of months. All right. So if you can see for the US, it has a gradual increase in its inflation. For the euro over here, you can see last month we did pop down into a negative 0.2. The UK seemed pretty okay with the up 1%. And I'm just doing Singapore for comparison because I live there. We are in a little bit of a negative inflation, but I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Now, the reason why we're looking at inflation, because the concerns that are happening around the euro side is, the eyes are on the euro side, where they're kind of wondering, with the current inflation figures in the euro, are they going to do something about it to change anything? In fact, to change anything about their monetary policy, or whether or not they're going to come up with any more so-called intervention. All right, you can see, I'm just showing you guys headlines right now. You can find this on the Financial Times. Okay, but last week, while there was concern of that whether or not Lagarde would take a step in, but I think she was kind of downplayed the so-called inflation issue, and what that did was it kind of caused or it kind of allowed the euro to kind of do this. Let me just show the chart. Okay, so the euro, what happened is it's a pretty range bound. This is a daily chart just between the euro dollar. All right, you can see that it's been traveling in a really tight range. A major reason, of course, is because, I think with everywhere in this COVID situation, recovery is not going to be fast until numbers get better and borders open up. And I think that's why, if we look at big picture, it really is about how the economies are kind of just able to sustain where it's at, so that it doesn't, I think a lot of countries, they are just trying not to go too high. They're trying not to go too low for now, because it's still a little bit of a wait and see moment, a little bit of a balancing moment, where everybody wants to recover, but while borders are still closed, there are sectors, there are sectors in trouble, there are companies in troubles. They are really trying to balance this, number one, without printing too much money, or trying not to print money too fast. And that is what I think the euro is kind of doing, where we do see that there might be an opportunity for another stimulus, but they're not going to rush into it. A little bit of a different stance from the US. They're going to really make sure that it's really needed before they start printing it and pumping it into the economy. Because I think if they're going to do it too quick, it kind of is a moot point, because it's with the borders closed, and with everything still pretty sluggish. Injection too early, I think, wouldn't really help in terms of really getting the economy back up in that sense. So my view on the euro dollar, it's still pretty range bound. I wouldn't say seasonally, but I think in this so-called climate where everybody's a bit bearish on the US, there is a bit room for the upside, but it's really a very I would say limited upside, where I think the limit is 120 unless there's a new policy that unless Lagarde or someone steps in and says that okay, they're ready to do something, and then we'll expect a difference. If not, I think it's going to be a tight range for at least a couple of weeks unless something big changes. All right, and that's why if we look at the inflation index in terms of so-called statistics, you can see the euro isn't doing as well, but it is kind of a lagging indicator right now. It's very sentiment based trading that's happening, and even when we look at the UK side, you can see things like this. One reason why the British pound really tanked was because of the so-called Brexit. The Brexit story has returned to the headlines. All right, it was kind of quiet for Brexit for a while, but now the Brexit story is back. So I feel there is a lot more sentiment trading at the moment because a lot of speculation on who's going to say what, a lot of noise in the market. So I will recommend that if we just look at inflation numbers, just based on numbers alone, the UK does have a slight recovery in inflation, which means it's a slight recovery in productivity in at least in their domestic market. So I wouldn't tank on the UK yet. This might just be a huge correction. It might be a sentiment move, but I am still pretty sure that the UK is not going to go to the ground unless they confirm that there's a no Brexit deal or something big comes out. But it's a lot of sentiment noise in the market, and that's where I think I always turn to the technical analysis side to support the fundamental bias that I have. So my chart I'm looking for next week is mainly I still like the euro dollar. I'm still looking at the euro dollar. I'm still looking for SG. I'm still looking for dollar Sing shorts. All right. Again, fundamental analysis plays on medium to long term. So it's not going to happen in a day or a week. It might take a couple of weeks or a month, but I do like the technical aspect that kind of backs the fundamental story until the US does something different, or at least until the election where, we have a bigger sentimental play. Singapore, in terms of recovery, it's still pretty decent. So I do see still a little bit of strength in Singapore dollar, at least. I think the most it can go is 1.35 because the government is really tight on the range as well. So yeah, my two charts are still euro dollar and dollar Sing. And of course, I'm looking at pound opportunities to go long after the deep correction, which again, the correction might happen a little bit longer. This is just the BXY, which Lloyd will probably talk more about later. Okay, big tanking down on the daily time frame. So, again, we're at a very technical area. So I will be looking for opportunities to long the pound, but if it fits the technical analysis that, kind of fits the fundamental bias I have. So fundamentally, I'm still a little bit long in terms of the pound, but I need a technical signal before I actually jump in. Yeah, that's all for me next week in terms of what I'll be looking at.
It's Alexis, so pretty interesting stuff. So at the moment, inflation is higher in the US than in the other developed markets.
Yes, so it's really interesting because you're looking at the stats in terms of inflation, it really seems that it is kind of higher. At least it's progressively higher, in fact. So it's pretty interesting in that fact. So I don't see that the US, I mean, no matter how the dollar bears are coming in, I still don't see it going down too far, because it seems that productivity is still kind of surviving in that sense comparatively to the other economies in that sense.
It's certainly hard to justify an interest rate cut further, isn't it, when you've got inflation coming? Yeah, it's interesting. You'd expect if they'll be pleased to see inflation. Inflation is the friend of the indebted, and they are indebted. So inflation can only be a very, very good thing for them.
Yeah, correct.
Look, yep.
Yeah, there's this. If you guys, you can just Google the monetary policy of the Bank of England. It does give the UK's so-called targets or what they might want to go towards. and that could also be a reason if of how far they missed the mark, and that's where the sentiment pulls the currency down, because they're quite far off from their so-called targets in that sense.
Yeah, fair enough. We be interesting to see what does come in the UK this week. It was a big sell last week on that pound, and obviously some uncertainty about Brexit and some monetary policy stuff.